All right, who let the dogs out? That's what I want to know. Who let the dogs out? Come on. Woof woof. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. We talk about all things cannabis here every Friday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. And at the top of the hour, in just about 30 minutes or so, we're going to get into some new ownership and a new dispensary that is opening here in the Massachusetts area. And then at the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour, we'll go head back to New Jersey and talk about some of the new rules that they have introduced. But right now we are joined by a gentleman from Los Angeles, a veterinarian from Los Angeles. And I know that my co-host David Rabinovitz is a dog lover. In fact, I could say that he never goes anywhere without his dog. Is that accurate, David?
I wouldn't go quite that far, but I fell in love with a woman who was she probably loves the dogs more than she loves me. We have 3 of them, and one of them came up to Syracuse with us.
There you go. And Dr. Tim Hsu joins us from LA, and he's with a group called the Vet CBD Hemp World. And tell us a little bit about your background, Dr. Tim, and how in the world did you get into CBD and pets?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jimmy and David. Really happy to be here. So my background is I'm a veterinarian, and prior to getting into cannabinoid therapeutics, I practiced in general emergency critical care medicine. And for me, the perspective that I have is we always need to be looking at the forefront of medicine. You know, what's next on the radar? Because we know that the way that medicine is practiced today is not how it was practiced yesterday, right? And what I mean by yesterday is looking at it 50 years ago, right? If we went to our doctors today and they said, you know, I learned everything I know in 1950, we'd be in trouble, right? So, you know, fast forward to today and looking into tomorrow, well, what does medicine look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? We know that's going to be different because it's going to be improved. We're going to have new therapeutics, new techniques. But how do we get there? By looking at what some of the untapped areas are. And cannabinoid therapeutics is one of the biggest untapped areas of medicine, primarily our understanding of the endocannabinoid system. So for me, it was really about integrating cannabinoid therapeutics and our understanding of the endocannabinoid system into veterinary medicine. So I started that in 2015, and here we are 6 years later.
You know, it's so funny, Doctor, and I don't know how funny it is. It's just what everyone in the cannabis industry is up against when we talk about ridding the world of stigma. When you try to explain to people that the endocannabinoid system is found in all humans, but then you extend it to all mammals. And that, of course, includes our little furry, warm-blooded friends, your dogs and your cats. I have some friends who are veterinarians, and I remember having early discussions as I was learning about the endocannabinoid system. And, you know, there was a scare because I think for a long time, pet owners were very cautious about their pets getting into their own personal stash that had THC, which is a dangerous cannabinoid for pets. Am I right here?
Well, when we're talking about THC, we want to understand that THC does have medicinal potential. That's right. The important thing to understand. For a really long time, and this is really unfortunate, that you know, the only exposure that most veterinarians have to THC is seeing pets that have gotten into too much THC and have come in through the emergency route.
Right.
But the reality is that THC, because it's a partial agonist of the CB1 receptor, and we know that there are benefits of CB1 agonism, especially when it comes to things like you know, pain, for example. THC does have therapeutic potential. Now, the question is using it in the right amount. So whenever pets get presented to the veterinarian, it's because they got into way too much THC. When THC is used appropriately in the right amount or in conjunction with other cannabinoids like CBD, it does provide therapeutic benefit. So that is something to keep in mind. Gotcha. It really depends on the amount that's being utilized.
Which is why hemp, which is under 0.3%, or at least technically under 0.3% THC, has been used more effectively to treat pets and their ailments, correct?
It depends on how you present it, because we know that there are certain conditions where THC may actually be very beneficial in larger amounts. You know, for example, if you're dealing with animals that are dealing with severe pain, an increased amount of THC may actually work more effectively. And then also looking at the entire area of cancer, we are still unsure about how cannabinoids how they interact with cancer cells. But the preliminary preclinical evidence shows that there is potential use for cannabinoids, including THC, in the treatment of cancer cells. So it really just depends on the situation, and every individual is going to be different, and every individual is going to respond differently.
Well, that's certainly true on humans. Is that true for pets too? I'm going to guess yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's not a one size fits all amount that we're using. Basically, what it comes down to is the individual and their condition is going to be responsive to different cannabinoids and different amounts. So, for example, you may have two dogs that are, both 70-pound dogs, and one may be utilizing far less than the other one. It just depends on the individual's physiology and endocannabinoid system.
Gotcha. David, I know as a dog lover and a pet owner, you must have some questions for the doctor here as far as the use of CBD, and how do you communicate to your dog, David, if they can't tell you, hey, David, you're giving me too much stuff here, man. I mean, how does that work?
So let me do this, Jimmy. Rather than throw a question out for me, I threw something into the chat as soon as we got the doctor on to ask, does anybody have any questions?
Yep.
So Bob wants to know, is it normal for a small cat to sleep 10 hours when given a small CBD piece?
It depends. There's a lot more to unwrap there. I mean, cats normally do sleep a lot to begin with. And, it just depends on if that was normal before or afterwards. But the biggest thing is, based off of that, I can't provide any sort of assessment. So in that situation, the best way to have an assessment on that is to see the veterinarian. That is the primary caregiver, because they are able to do the physical exam. They're able to do the blood work to make sure that everything else is normal or potentially abnormal, and they're able to make the best assessment on that. So that's one thing that we always tell people is to see your veterinarian and make sure that they get a complete picture for you.
Yep. I'm actually a fan of it, Jimmy. We have, so up here in Syracuse, my stepdaughter, they have two dogs, and one of the dogs, for whatever reason, is terrified of me. And the only way I could come into the house for the past couple of years is
I could give you a few reasons, David. Go ahead.
I didn't say there weren't reasons, Jimmy. I said
Okay.
the dog just, for whatever reason, if the dog would see me and panic, and I mean truly panic, like let go all of its body functions.
Okay. I have that effect too. Sometimes when no, I'm only kidding. Go ahead.
CBD is the only thing that would calm the dog down.
Interesting.
They would give her CBD before I'd show up, and then she'd be fine.
Not surprising to you, Dr. Tim?
So the remarkable thing about CBD is the amount of calm that it can bring for a lot of animals in stressful situations. The biggest example that we see of this every July 4th is that we have a lot of pet owners that come to us and say, my dog, my cat freaks out during the sounds of fireworks. And they've tried a lot of different things, and CBD oftentimes is a complete game changer for them. They go from their dog freaking out to the sound of fireworks to actually being okay with the sound of fireworks. And I've experienced that myself personally with one of my previous dogs who's no longer with us, that before she used to be so scared of any sort of loud noises. But it wasn't until I incorporated CBD into her regimen that those loud noises no longer seemed to bother her. In fact, I remember I actually took her on a walk July 4th one evening when the fireworks were going off in the neighborhood, and she was perfectly fine. And, this dog years ago, if there was a car or a motorcycle with a loud exhaust that went down the street, she would freak out from that. And so this was a dramatic night and day difference. And we see that in a lot of animals, actually.
Or Yogi is one of our regular listeners, and he's always on the show. We always appreciate his comments in the chat. He's got a boxer he claims CBD helps calm the boxer down very nicely. They're
excitable dogs to begin with, right? As a breed.
They can be, yeah.
And you're not surprised to hear the effect that CBD. My question on this is, how do you know you're getting full spectrum CBD? How do you know that it is coming from the actual plant? I mean, there's still a lot of gray area out there when it comes to CBD. As a veterinarian, how do you recommend making sure that you're getting the tested products that are out there?
Yeah, so it all comes down to lab testing. The world of hemp is still a little bit of the wild, wild west in terms of the final product is not required to undergo any sort of testing regimen. And so previously studies that have looked at the hemp market have shown that a fair amount of products that are sold out there actually don't contain the amount of CBD that's listed on the label. And so one of the most important things to do is to make sure that any product that you're purchasing, whatever batch it's created from, has a certificate of analysis that's attached to it. And you should be able to get that from the company either through their website or by calling them up. That certificate of analysis is the tests that were run on that batch of product. And the thing is that, it's not just one test. So for example, what we do is we have a triple testing procedure. So that way we test the raw materials at the beginning, we test it during the manufacturing process, and we test the final product. Now, the final product, what we do is we test it for potency to make sure that whatever label claim is on the product is actually in there. So if it says it's 125 milligrams of CBD, you can actually rest assured that it's 125 milligrams of CBD. The other thing that we also do is test for pesticides, residual solvents, bacteria like E. coli and salmonella, mycotoxins, and also heavy metals. Now, these are all things that you want to see in the COA because this is a consumable product. You're going to be putting it in your body or your animal's body, and you want to make sure that it's safe, clean, and consistent. So lab testing and making sure that you have a COA attached with every single batch of product that's produced is going to be a key component of selecting the right product.
And when you say a COA, that's a certificate of authenticity, yes?
Certificate of analysis.
Of analysis, I'm sorry. Yep.
You were thinking about baseball cards, David. I understand that.
Yeah.
That's, those are COAs and signed baseball cards, but I understand. Dr. Tim, tell us a little bit about your scholarship initiative that you've introduced, because that's what caught my eye this week, and tell us how that all came about and how people might be interested in getting involved with that.
Yeah, this is one of the coolest things that we've done, and this is something that I'm really excited about. So, just to give you some background about where medical education is right now, I talked to recent graduates of veterinary school, medical school. I talked to registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and time again, what I asked them is, how much about the endocannabinoid system did you learn in school? And more often than not, the answer is zero, nothing at all, nothing at all. And so the way that I explain this to people is this is the same as if somebody went through medical training and said they learned nothing about the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system is the body system that creates and regulates your hormones. So things like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and things like that. And, how wild would it be if you went to your doctor and you asked them, are my testosterone levels low? Tell me about my estrogen levels. How wild would it be if they say, you know what, I don't know anything about hormones. I never learned anything about the endocrine system in school. That would sound crazy, and quite frankly, the doctor would be doing a medical disservice to the client or to the patient by not knowing about that. But that's the reality that we face today, is that when we go to our veterinarians, when we go to our doctors, and we ask them about the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoids that our bodies produce, the answer more often than not is that they either don't know anything about it or they don't feel comfortable talking about it. And so 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to look back and think about what a disservice we were doing for our clients or our patients by not knowing about the endocannabinoid system, by not talking to them about the impacts that it has on health and disease. And so for us, this is a way of giving back to the veterinary community and investing in its future. For a really long time, cannabis has actually been stigmatized in the veterinary community. As we mentioned earlier, the whole issue with THC and, animals getting into the owner's stash, and that's where some of it comes from. But, the thing is that we've known about the endocannabinoid system for a really long time. It's been almost 30 years now. And it's really time that we start incorporating this education back into the schools so that these graduates can talk to their clients about it and understand their patients' health better.
I'm fascinated with the fact that we can talk about it as openly as we are. And now, from your perspective, the animal kingdom can get some benefits from this as well. Are you confident that the federal government that's looking into regulating CBD knows what the hell they're doing? Because I'm not.
That's a great question. It's a very complex and complicated question.
Yeah.
That one gets complex. And, what I'm always in favor of is I'm always in favor of increased access. Because the way that I see it is that, cannabis has been prohibited for the past 100 years, more or less. And what a great disservice we've done to the people of the country and the animals of the country by doing that. And because what's happened is our knowledge of cannabinoid therapeutics and the endocannabinoid system is not where it should be.
Right.
Imagine where medicine would be today if
Right.
prohibition against cannabis had never happened. And so for me, it's really about making that push towards that time in the future where cannabis is not some sort of prohibited substance. It's not some sort of hush hush topic that people can't talk about, but it's talked about openly, and it's talked about when it, especially when it comes to our health and understanding disease processes better in both humans and animals.
So any comments regarding CBG or CBN with respect to pets?
Ooh.
Great question. And that's something that we're actively doing R&D on. We're not just looking at CBD, but we're also looking at other cannabinoids like CBC, CBG, CBN, CBDA, because we know that there's been over 140 different cannabinoids that have been identified, but all the talk has been between THC and CBD. And now some people are starting to talk about CBG and CBN. But the reality is our understanding of the other cannabinoids outside of THC and CBD is still very, very, very early stages. And even when it comes to THC and CBD, let's be clear, our understanding of that is still early stages as well.
What's CBG? Because I just held up the Hemp House Farms group sent me this stuff, and it's been unopened on my desk now for a number of months because I'm really not sure what to do with this. I know it's a cannabinoid. What do we have any idea? And is it safe for me, a human, or should I just wait and give it to David for his pets?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the plant, CBG is the precursor cannabinoid. So CBGA, which is what it is in the plant, actually gets converted to the other cannabinoids. Now, in terms of its therapeutic potential, we still don't quite know yet. And this is what's remarkable about this market, is that the market moves faster than the research. So for example, right now you're able to buy CBG products, but in terms of the clinical studies that have been done on CBG, almost nothing. And so same thing with the other cannabinoids out there like CBC, you're able to purchase CBC, but in terms of the clinical studies that have been done on CBC, there's just about nothing out there.
Yeah. And I thought the CDC was the Center for Disease Control. I didn't realize it was a cannabinoid too. No, I'm only kidding. Look, there's so many. You mentioned the market precedes the research, right? Isn't that what you just said?
Right.
By the way, how sad is that? Because I think that we all recognize the importance of education when it comes to any kind of medicinal product, whether that's plant-based or chem lab based, right? And to have to work within the sculpture of what we've got right now, it's not exactly the most conducive to learning about new things, because everywhere you look, there are federal regulations and other rules and regulations designed to protect us from what we don't know, yet they're not allowing us to study what we don't know. It's a really bad catch-22 right now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's the thing that we've seen for a very long time is, there are a lot of researchers out there that are really interested in studying cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. But traditionally they've had to jump through so many hoops and so much red tape just to be able to study it. And, the hurdle that they've always come up against is they say, we want to study this because we think it has medical benefits, potential therapeutic benefits. And the pushback is always that, well, it's a Schedule I substance. There is no medical benefit for a Schedule I substance. And so you get stuck in that catch-22, and it's like, we want to study it, but then they say, well, why do you want to study something that has no benefit? Well, because we think it has benefit, and we want to disprove that the idea that it doesn't.
Yeah, but it's a Schedule I drug, and it can't be studied in a safe manner.
Yeah. Right.
So that's where the hemp, the farm bill actually was really important to allowing a pathway for a lot of universities and researchers to be able to study cannabinoids, particularly CBD from hemp.
Yeah. If they could figure out exactly what the heck to do, because I got to tell you, they make it, the Farm Bill passes in 2018. It's a big deal. And they did it without even thinking about, okay, what do we do with it now? Which, because if it's a legal substance and it's going to be grown as a crop, how are we going to regulate it and research it? I mean, it was, as usual, our government just kind of did it because they felt like, I'd love to find out the inner workings about how that bill did get passed in its state, and without really doing their homework on what exactly it meant to be legal now. I mean, David, do you have any insight on that?
Bear in mind, Jimmy, in defense of the government, well, I'm not a fan of the way the FDA approached this, right? At least
Right.
the Department of Justice, when Colorado decided they were going to legalize, the DOJ stood up and said, you're breaking federal law, but here's what the guardrails are going to be. And that started with the Ogden memo, right? That laid out, here's what you can do and you can't do. The FDA just stuck their head in the sand and said, no, we don't hear you doing it. Right? So when it finally came up with the Farm Bill, they were so far behind the curve. They hadn't thought about it. They didn't want to look at the horizon. And that's why things are kind of jammed up that way, right? I'm not a fan of the way the FDA handled it.
And now what are we going to do? And now what are they going to do? Right.
Right.
Because now they're trying to figure it out. And every time, and look what happened to Charlotte's Web recently. They just said, well, not a dietary supplement. Sorry. We made this ruling when Big Pharma created Epidiolex for seizure medicine. Right. I mean,
that was a real stock crusher for Charlotte's Web.
I shake my head only because we're right in the middle of it now, because we are able to talk about it openly, which is progress. But Dr. Tim, you've already figured out there are plenty of loopholes now that we've got to figure out a way through for the benefit of our favorite furry friends, our animals, as well as our fellow humans as well. Tell us how people can get involved and perhaps apply for a scholarship that your group's involved with.
Yeah, sure. So they can go into our website. It's vetcbdhemp.com. You'll find a charity tab up at the top. And we have a number of initiatives there, but it's listed under the scholarship. And so the way that we have it set up is it needs to be peer nominated. And so what that means is if you have somebody that you feel is a exemplary example of what it means to be a team player by, incorporating others in your environment, lifting them up, and really being a leader in your space, then you nominate them because we want this to be a group community effort. We want to identify the people that are really going to be not just the leaders of tomorrow, but the people that really bring everybody into this space.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, congratulations on this initiative. I know that we need more people like yourself who are clear thinkers and also thinking about the next generation, because we are just now starting to scratch the surface of our knowledge about this incredible plant that has been put on this earth for thousands of years and used medicinally for thousands of years. But we all know why it was prohibited 100 years ago or 80 odd years ago. And we're still fighting that fight now. So Dr. Tim Shue, again, thank you so much for joining us here on this Friday afternoon edition of Green Rush Live. And again, you are welcome here anytime if you need to wave the flag in whatever capacity for our fine feathered and furry friends that I know all you dog lovers and cat lovers out there want to make sure that you take care of, just like you would take care of your own, because they're part of your family. Right, guys? You both have dogs, I know, right?
Absolutely.
I just rescue them. That's what I do. But anyway, and we'll talk about it. We're going to take a break. We continue with more. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand